Okay, so I've been asked to talk about pros and cons of open access publishing, and it's actually pretty easy to do. Um, but when I got asked to do this, I said to myself, how do I find out information? So I live in a department. Okay, let me backtrack a little bit. I'm here as editor of the journal database, which is Oxford University Press journal. I'm not here as my day job, which is working at the National Library of Medicine. So just to clear that up. And so I asked the people in my department, which is about close to 100 people, give me a list of pros and cons. And which was not, I got probably 10 responses from people.
It's almost like asking ChatGPT.
Not quite. But I distilled those down to very few because they were almost all identical. I'm going to talk about, I've done my introduction basically, then I'll talk about pros and then cons and then some suggestions. So about a little bit of history too. In the 90s, it was actually incredibly exciting to live, I just wanted to add this in, to live at the NCBI during the time of the beginning of open access, where Harold Varmister was director of the NIH. David Lippman was there. He was talking to one of the Eisen brothers. He was talking to the guy at VTech Trucks in London, who started Biomed Central and the BMC. And so it was almost on a daily basis that we were getting updated about what was happening in the field. And the change from that time to now is huge, both in the sense of rules for FAIR, for example, thinking about large language models and how to use them properly and not abuse them. But there are issues about that which are in the pros and cons. Pros I got from my list of my members of my department. People can read the text seamlessly. Yeah, that's pretty okay. You can read them online. You can print them PDFs. You can get them according to whichever format you want, PMC or journal. But the other important part is software programs can read them too, which helps people do text mining and do a lot of good work on comparing text to each other, rather than and help you find other articles about what you're reading about. It's very wide dissemination. You don't need to only go to the library. If you want to, you can, but very few people do that anymore. They basically go online and they find everything. There's improved citation for open access journals. In some cases, there's been a study which I couldn't replicate finding, but it's out there somewhere, that's shown that citations of open access papers are higher than for non-open access. And anyone can access papers for with few resources. All you really need is a handheld and an internet connection, which is actually terrific in my opinion. So growing up in a country where libraries were tough to find, academic libraries were tough to find, and not all journals were in the libraries. So it was more difficult then than it is now, where you can just get it all online. So I think it's helped sort of disseminate information to people all over the world, and not in the places only where there's good library structure. In terms of the cons, there are very few, really. The cost to publishing has risen dramatically. For those who have tried to publish in Nature recently, it's tremendously expensive. I looked it up this morning. To publish a paper, accepted paper in Nature, it's $12,000. In Nature Communication, it's $5,000. which is a lot more expensive than many of the other publishers like PLOS and OUP and other places. So, but their business model has changed, and that's where we have to change our approach to their business model, and that involves talking to your institution's library, because if they're changing their business model, they're changing the way they charge for subscription, which is now should be much less because of the way they're charging to write in their manuscript journals. But the library is still getting funding to pay for a subscription for those journals. So how can they reuse that funding to help you as an author to publish? And certainly some institutions like my own, which is a pretty big institution, helps us pay for funding of manuscripts in publishers that charge a lot. So, but it's still expensive. So the problem I see in this process is that funders have to realize where they're going to have to pay for their publication costs. There's very little. It's not a line item in your grant application, and it should actually be elsewhere. Your institutions should find a way to pay for that. And then the other con that some people came up with was that there are too many journals. There really are a lot of journals, and if you think about it, and over the past 40 plus years that I've been in science, it's orders of magnitude, probably 2 orders of magnitude, if not more, between the number of journals there were in those days and that there are now. And everybody's trying to corner a market of manuscripts that they can publish and charge for. So, I'm not sure all of that is the best thing for all of us. So these are the few things that came up. But most people said, it's really, what are the cons are very few. The pros are tremendous in terms of dissemination of information. And that's where I'm going to end, and thank you all for listening. And you can ask me questions later. Did I do less than 10 minutes, Francis?
Sir,
Did I do?
You are actually, you're made up for the time of other speakers before.